My name is Clara, and I'm 32 years old. From the outside, my life looks like a success story. People post about online, quiet house, steady career, a touch of independence that others call freedom. I work as a regional sales representative for a major pharmaceutical company, which means I spend half my life in airports and hotel lobbies smiling through endless client meetings. The job pays well, and 3 years ago, I bought a 3 bedroom house tucked into a calm suburb with a cherry tree in the front yard. It's not grand, but it's mine. When I'm home, it's just me and Muffin, my gray tabby cat I adopted 5 years ago. She greets me every time I return from a trip as if I've been gone for years, curling against my legs and chirping with that strange little sound she makes. She's more loyal than most people I know. I tell her that sometimes. My parents live about 20 minutes away, retired social, still throwing small neighborhood dinners. My older sister Karen, 35, is married to Brad, and they have 2 kids, 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Jake. They rent a small apartment on the other side of town, 2 bedrooms, one perpetually noisy heater, and an endless string of temporary problems. Brad used to work in construction, but hasn't held a steady job in years. Karen stays home with the kids. She says it's because childcare costs too much. Growing up, Karen was the golden child. She was the type who filled a room just by walking into it. Drama club. Star homecoming queen, effortlessly adored. I was the quieter one, the girl with perfect grades and invisible presence. My parents never meant to play favorites, but they did. Their compliments always had a comparison tucked inside Karen's, so talented Karen's, so outgoing. I learned early on that love sometimes comes with conditions like how useful or easy you are to deal with. Maybe that's why I started helping her financially. About 3 years ago, I began sending Karen $500 a month. No explanations, no questions. I told myself it was to help her kids. It made me feel generous, important even. But generosity has a funny way of twisting when it's never reciprocated. Soon, the monthly transfers weren't enough. She'd call saying Jake needed a new coat, or Emma's shoes were too tight, or the fridge broke. Each time, I said yes. I'd drive to Target, fill my cart, and leave the bags at their door. She'd thank me with a quick text, "You're the best sis," and then another request would come 2 weeks later. My parents praised me endlessly for helping. "You've got such a good heart," my mom would say. "Your sister's lucky to have you." I used to smile and agree. But over time, the compliments began to feel like a leash. Because the truth was, every dollar I sent made them expect more. And the more I gave, the less they seemed to respect me. Still, I kept giving. Because that's what the quiet one does. She keeps peace, keeps paying, keeps earning love. She's not sure she even wants anymore. This year, though, I was determined to enjoy Christmas. No guilt, no drama, just family food and laughter. I spent weeks choosing thoughtful gifts, a dollhouse for Emma, a big Lego set for Jake, a restaurant gift card for my parents, and a new coffee maker for Karen and Brad because theirs had broken months ago. It felt good to give something simple without strings. By the time December 25th arrived, I was humming carols in my car as I drove to my parents' house. Their neighborhood was wrapped in soft winter lighthouses lined with glowing reindeer children, playing on driveways, smoke curling up from chimneys. It looked like a postcard. Inside, the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon hit me like a wave of nostalgia. My mom's voice carried from the kitchen, cheerful and commanding as ever. Relatives filled the house. Aunt Linda and Uncle Tom chatting in the corner. Cousin Rachel showing off her new boyfriend, Dad, laughing with Uncle Pete about some fishing story. The warmth of it all made something in my chest unclench. When Emma saw me, she squealed Aunt Clara and ran straight into my arms. Jake followed, holding a crumpled drawing he had made of me and Muffin. "I made this for you," he said proudly. I knelt down smiling as if the world wasn't made of cracks waiting to show. "It's perfect," I told him. Karen came over then, that familiar tight smile on her face. "Hey," she said, giving me a quick hug. "Thanks for the coffee maker." "Of course," I replied. "Glad you'll get to actually drink hot coffee again." She laughed, but it sounded rehearsed, practiced. Mom was her usual whirlwind, kissing my cheek, telling me I looked thin, asking if I was eating enough. Dad gave me a firm pat on the shoulder and said it was good to see me home. For a moment it felt normal. We all sat down to dinner at 5 o'clock, the table overflowing with food. Laughter bubbled around the room. For once no one was arguing. I let myself relax, thinking maybe this year will actually be different. Then, halfway through the meal, Karen cleared her throat. A practiced sound too loud, too deliberate. The conversation faded, replaced by expectant silence. She smiled, that old center of attention smile, the one she used to wear when she had gossip everyone wanted to hear. So she said, brightly glancing around the table, "We have a surprise for Clara." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "A surprise," I repeated. Mom and Dad exchanged that knowing parental look, the kind that told me, whatever this was, they were in on it. Mom's eyes were shining. "We've all been talking," Karen continued, "and we decided something that'll make things easier for everyone." I waited, heartbeat steady but slow. "After New Year's, she said my family's going to move in with you, Clara." The sound of her words didn't register at first. It was like my brain refused to process them. The fork in my hand suddenly felt heavy. I set it down gently, deliberately. "Move in with me?" I asked. Mom jumped in before Karen could respond. "It makes perfect sense," she said, voice too cheerful. "Their lease ends on December 31st, and you've got that big house all to yourself. 3 bedrooms. Think about how much easier things will be." Karen nodded eagerly. "Exactly. The kids can share one room, Brad and I another. You can move your office into your bedroom. It's not like you use it much when you're traveling. It'll be fun, like a big family again." Her tone was sugary, but underneath it was steel. I looked around the table. Everyone was watching me, waiting for my reaction. No one seemed to notice the complete absurdity of what she'd just said, or maybe they did and didn't care. I took a slow sip of water, forcing my voice to stay calm. "No," I said simply. Karen blinked. "What?" I said no. My voice was even steady. "You can't move into my house." The table fell silent. Mom's smile faltered. "Clara, don't be selfish. We're family. You need to help your sister." My pulse quickened, but I didn't waver. "This will never happen," I said. "I'm not letting anyone move into my house." Karen's face turned red. Her jaw clenched. Then suddenly she grabbed her glass of cherry juice and hurled it at me. It happened in slow motion, a red blur arcing through the air. I jerked sideways. The glass shattered against the wall behind me, juice, splattering across my white blouse like blood. The entire room froze. Even the kids stopped moving. I pushed my chair back and stood. My voice, when it came, was polite and calm. "Excuse me," I said softly. "I'll be right back." Then I walked out of the dining room into the hallway, my hands trembling just enough that I had to clasp them together to hide it. In the bathroom, I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror. Red stains blooming across my blouse, spreading like a wound. I wasn't shaking from fear. It was fury. All I could think was, $30,000. 3 years of help. And this is how they repay me. The betrayal burned so deep it felt cold. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. Scrolled until I found the one name that mattered. David Chen, my lawyer. He answered on the second ring. "Clara, Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, David," I said quietly. "They just did it, exactly like we thought." "Are you sure?" "Completely." I took a breath. "Go ahead. Do everything we discussed." There was a pause, then his voice firm. "Consider it done." I hung up, staring at my reflection again. The red stains almost looked like war paint. The war had officially begun. When I stepped out of the bathroom, the laughter and chatter from before had died down. The air in the dining room was heavy, the kind of silence that hums under your skin. Everyone was staring at their plates, pretending they weren't waiting for me to explode. I didn't. I never do. I walked back to my seat, sat down slowly, and looked around the table. Karen's face was still flushed, her eyes glinting with defiance. My mother looked embarrassed, though I couldn't tell if it was for me or for the spectacle her favorite daughter had caused. My father avoided my eyes altogether. "Are you done?" I asked Karen evenly. Her lips tightened. "You're unbelievable, Clara. All these years I thought you were just quiet, but you're actually heartless." I tilted my head. "You threw a drink at me because I said no. What does that make you?" A tense murmur rippled around the table. Aunt Linda coughed awkwardly, trying to diffuse the situation, but no one followed her lead. The air felt colder now, sharper. My mother's voice cut through it, the voice I grew up obeying without question. "Enough. We're not doing this tonight. Clara, will talk later, and you'll come to your senses. You always do." That last sentence stung more than it should have. She didn't mean it cruelly. She meant it as a fact, as if I'd been trained to surrender eventually. But not this time. I kept my eyes on Karen. "You Brad the kids, you're not moving into my house. Period. You can find another solution." Karen laughed, a humorless, bitter sound. "You think you're better than us because you have a big house and a cat. You're alone, Clara. Nobody even wants to live with you." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were true, but because a part of me had thought them too. The quiet house, the empty rooms, the echo of my own footsteps after every trip. Loneliness was my unspoken secret. But loneliness is still better than manipulation dressed as love. I stood up, gathering my purse. "Dinner was lovely," I said politely. "I'll see myself out." My mother reached for me. "Clara, don't be dramatic." "Me," I smiled faintly. "I think I've been remarkably calm considering the ambush you all just pulled." I could feel everyone watching me as I walked toward the door. The clink of silverware stopped. The children's eyes followed me, wide and confused. I paused for just a moment at the threshold and looked back at the decorated tree, glowing softly in the corner at Karen's smug face, at my mother's forced composure, a snapshot of a family I no longer recognized. Then I left. Outside, the night was clear, cold, and painfully still. The stars looked distant, indifferent. I stood by my car for a moment, breathing out clouds of white mist. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from David Chen. "David, all documents ready. I'll finalize and send first thing tomorrow morning." Me, "Thank you. Merry Christmas." As I drove home, the radio played faintly an old Christmas song about love and forgiveness. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I got home, Muffin greeted me at the door, twining around my legs with her usual affection. I crouched down, scratching behind her ears, and whispered, "It's just you and me, sweetheart." I made tea, sat by the window, and stared out at the street. A family across the road was still opening gifts. I watched their silhouettes through the curtains, laughter wrapping paper, a child jumping into someone's arms. For a split second, a dull ache pulsed through my chest. I missed something. I'd never actually had a family that didn't come with conditions. I told myself I wasn't crying, it was just the steam from the tea stinging my eyes. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every moment from dinner, every dismissive glance, every time my mother said, "Be a good sister." The betrayal had been carefully built brick by brick over years of small manipulations. I just hadn't seen the wall closing in until it was complete. By morning, I decided to clean. It's what I do when I can't think: wipe surfaces, organize drawers, pretend order can fix what's broken. When I reached my desk, I opened the bottom drawer where I kept a small external hard drive. It was labeled simply "Monitor." Most people assume pet cameras are for checking in on their animals. For me, it had become something else entirely. Months ago, I'd bought it to keep an eye on Muffin while traveling. But lately it had shown me more than I ever wanted to see. I opened the folder on my laptop, timestamps, dates, clips. My hands hovered over the mouse for a moment. Then I clicked open a file labeled December 3rd. The screen came alive with grainy video footage from my living room daylight filtering through the curtains, Muffin sleeping on the couch, the sound of keys turning in the front door, then voices. My mother's voice. "Let's start with the upstairs," she said. I remembered that day clearly. I'd been in Ohio on a business trip, bored in my hotel room, checking the camera just to see Muffin. I hadn't expected company. I'd given my mom a spare key years ago so she could feed the cat, but she'd never mentioned bringing anyone with her. Then on the screen, Karen appeared, walking behind my mother, her eyes scanning every corner of my living room like she was already claiming it. When I first watched that clip, I thought maybe they were just cleaning or looking for something. But then they started opening drawers, checking closets. Karen even peeked into my bedroom. I remembered how my stomach had dropped that day, confusion curdling into dread. On the video, Muffin jumped onto the couch beside them, meowing softly. My mother shooed her away. "Get down. You're shedding everywhere." Then Karen spoke, and I'll never forget her tone. "I can't stand this cat. When I move in here, she's going to have to go. I'll tell Clara she ran away." I'd gasped aloud when I first heard it, the sound echoing in my hotel room. My throat had tightened so much I could barely breathe. Now watching it again, I noticed something else. My mother's silence wasn't surprise. It was agreement. "That cat's always been a nuisance," she said on the recording. Karen laughed. Then it settled. The rest of the video played like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. They sat on my couch, sipping tea from mugs I'd bought for them last Christmas, plotting how to make me feel guilty enough to give up my home. If she refuses, Karen said, "We'll make a scene. The kids can cry. Brad will talk about how hard things are. Mom. Dad, you have to guilt her. Tell her family helps family." My mother nodded like a general approving a strategy. "I can do that. I was in drama club, remember?" Karen grinned. "Perfect. She won't stand a chance." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money or housing. It was about control, about power disguised as family concern. And then came the final blow, my mother's voice calm and casual, like she was discussing grocery shopping. By the way, she said your father and I opened a credit card in Clara's name last month. We used her ID when she left it at the house. Had the card mailed here." Karen gasped. "Mom, that's illegal." "She'll forgive us," Mom replied. "She always does." The clip ended there. The silence in my living room was deafening. Even Muffin looked uneasy, her tail twitching as if she could sense the storm brewing inside me. I'd replayed that video a dozen times that night in Ohio, each repetition stripping away another layer of denial. My family wasn't just using me, they were betraying me deliberately, strategically. That was when I called David Chen. That was when the plan began. Now, watching the footage again, weeks later, I saved it to 3 different drives, encrypted it, and whispered aloud, "Merry Christmas, Mom. Merry Christmas, Karen." They thought they'd cornered me. They had no idea I'd already built the exit. The day I first saw that footage, I remember sitting frozen in my hotel bed, a half-finished cup of coffee going cold on the nightstand. The TV played quietly in the background, some generic holiday movie full of families hugging by fireplaces. I couldn't hear the dialogue anymore. All I could hear was my mother's voice from that tiny camera speaker, smooth and certain. "She'll forgive us. She always does." It wasn't shock that hit me first. It was humiliation. The realization that they saw me as predictable, weak, a daughter too docile to ever fight back, the one who would patch every crack no matter how deep the damage went. I remember whispering to no one, not this time. I played the recording again slower this time, watching every gesture, the way Karen's hand brushed dust off the mantel like she was already the homeowner, the way my mother leaned back on my couch, sipping tea as if she owned it, the way Muffin circled their feet, meowing softly, ignored by both of them. When Karen kicked at her to get her off the couch, something inside me twisted. That cat had been with me through breakups, layoffs, endless empty nights. She was family. And seeing Karen shove her away, hearing her joke about abandoning her somewhere far away, it hit a place deeper than reason. It wasn't just about Muffin. It was about the casual cruelty, the entitlement in her tone, the way my mother didn't even flinch. By the time the clip ended, my hands were shaking. But not from fear, from a strange cold clarity. I saved the video immediately. 3 backups, 1 on my laptop, 1 on a flash drive, and 1 in encrypted cloud storage. Then I opened a new contact on my phone and typed David Chen, legal counsel. We'd met earlier that year during a corporate seminar on intellectual property law. He'd struck me as steady, unflappable, the kind of man who never raised his voice but always won. I'd kept his card just in case. I hadn't expected to use it for family matters. When he answered that night, his tone was polite, businesslike. "This is David Chen." "Hi," I said. "We met at the Phoenix conference in May. You mentioned you handle personal legal issues as well." A pause. "Yes, that's correct. May I ask what this is about?" I told him everything, or at least the sanitized version. The financial support, the favoritism, the manipulation, and now the fraud. I left out the part about my cat, though I think he heard it anyway in my trembling voice. He listened silently until I finished, then said, "You have documentation. I have a full recording. Date-stamped, time-stamped, clear audio. It's incriminating." "Then you're already 1 step ahead of most people," he replied. "Here's what we'll do." That call lasted an hour. By the end, he'd mapped out a plan so precise it felt like armor. Legal documentation, notarized witness statements, certified copies of the footage, a fraud report ready to file if needed. He even suggested I draft a private property protection clause, something I could enforce immediately if they ever tried to enter my house without consent. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. The following days passed in a blur of logistics. Between client meetings and flight schedules, I found myself writing legal notes instead of sales reports. Each new draft hardened me. Each form I signed chipped away at the old version of myself, the obedient daughter, the compliant sister. Then came Christmas Eve. I stood in my living room that night, suitcase half packed for my upcoming business trip, staring at the silent monitor on the shelf. Muffin was curled on the couch, purring oblivious. I bent down and stroked her fur. "You're my witness, Muffin," I whispered. "If they try anything, we'll be ready." She blinked up at me with those steady green eyes, as if she already knew. Back at the dinner table the next evening, when Karen made her grand announcement, I wasn't blindsided. I'd seen it coming frame by frame weeks before. I just hadn't known how far they would go to make it real. Now, in the present sitting at home with the red stains still faintly visible on my blouse, I opened my laptop again. The email from David was waiting. Subject re. Christmas incident documents prepared. Fraud report drafted. Property clause signed and sealed. Confirm if we proceed tomorrow. I typed back. Proceed. Then I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The adrenaline that had fueled me all day began to ebb, replaced by a strange emptiness. The kind that comes when you realize you've crossed a line you can't uncross. Because this wasn't just about boundaries anymore, it was war. And in family wars, nobody wins, they just survive differently. I spent the next day in silence. No calls, no texts. I let my phone buzz itself to exhaustion. My mother called 3 times. I didn't pick up. Karen sent a single message, "We need to talk." I deleted it without reading the rest. By the second evening, curiosity got the better of me. I logged into my social media account, something I rarely did, and there it was, a new post from my mother. Families should always help each other, especially during hard times. Some people forget that love isn't measured by money, but by sacrifice. Hundreds of likes from her friends. Subtle enough to look like wisdom, sharp enough to be a dagger. I scrolled past it without reacting. Let them think they were winning. That night, I sat on the couch with Muffin on my lap, scrolling through the video again. This time, I noticed details I'd missed, the way my mother's voice softened. Whenever she justified something immoral, the way Karen kept saying, "We deserve this." They truly believed it. That's what chilled me most. When people betray you out of desperation, you can pity them. But when they betray you out of entitlement, it's harder to forgive. Around midnight, I received another message from David. David, tomorrow morning courier will deliver certified letters to your parents' and sisters' addresses. Do not engage. Let me handle all correspondence. I typed back a simple understood. Then I stared out the window, the neighborhood quiet under a layer of frost. Somewhere, wind chimes rattled the same sound my mother used to hang on our porch when I was a child. For a fleeting second, I remembered her humming while making cocoa, her hand brushing my hair back. And then I remembered her voice in that video, calm and practical, planning how to take everything from me. People talk about heartbreak like it's a sudden thing, a shattering. But mine was slow. It cracked along the edges piece by piece until one day I woke up and realized there was nothing left to fix. That realization didn't hurt anymore. It just made me cold. I whispered to the quiet room, "They think I'll forgive them. They don't know me anymore." Muffin's tail flicked once, as if in agreement. Outside, the frost glistened under the porch light, and I made myself a silent promise, whatever came next, I wouldn't flinch. Not this time. When I returned to my parents' house that night, everything had gone eerily still. The clinking of cutlery, the laughter, the hum of Christmas songs, all gone. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall filled the silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward me as I entered the dining room. Karen sat rigidly in her chair, her arms crossed, jaw tight. My mother looked pale, trying to recover her polite hostess face while my father avoided my gaze entirely. Aunt Linda, bless her, looked like she wanted to vanish into her mashed potatoes. I walked back to my seat slowly, deliberately. I didn't rush, didn't apologize, didn't explain. I just stood there, calm as ever. "I have a surprise for Karen, too," I said, voice level. That got everyone's attention. Karen's lips curled into a smirk. "Oh, you bought me a better gift than a coffee maker." I smiled faintly. Something like that. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table screen facing up. The glass glinted under the dining room light. "Before I start, I'd like to make sure everyone can hear clearly," I said, tapping the volume button. My mother's eyes narrowed. "Clara, what are you doing?" "Just sharing something that belongs to all of us," I replied. Then I pressed play. For a second, there was only static, then the unmistakable sound of my mother's voice filled the room. "Let's start with the upstairs." Karen blinked. "What?" "When I move in here," Karen's own voice said from the phone, "I'll get rid of this stupid cat. She sheds everywhere." The color drained from her face. I watched her expression unreadable as the recording continued. My mother's voice followed, light and dismissive. "That cat's always been a nuisance. Clara's too sentimental." Then came the part about the fake tears. The plan. The rehearsed guilt trips. The laughter. Around the table, everyone froze. Even the kids stopped fidgeting. Aunt Linda's fork hovered mid-air. Uncle Pete's eyebrows climbed higher with every word. Karen shot to her feet, voice trembling. You recorded us." I looked straight at her. "No. My home security did. The one you both forgot about when you went through my things." My mother's hand flew to her chest. "You had no right." "I had every right," I cut in my tone, still soft but sharper than a knife. "It's my house, my camera, my property." Karen's voice wavered. "You can't prove anything?" "I can prove everything," I said. And I already did. My lawyer has copies of this video, your voices, and the fraud report for the credit card you opened in my name." Gasps rippled through the table. My father's fork clattered onto his plate. "Clara, don't," I said quietly. "Don't pretend you didn't know." He didn't deny it. Karen tried again, desperation creeping into her voice. "You're destroying our family." I let out a bitter laugh. "No, you did that when you decided to steal from me." For a moment, no one spoke. Only the faint hum of Christmas lights in the corner filled the silence. Finally, my mother stood. Her voice trembled, but her eyes still burned with pride. "Clara, we're your family. We made mistakes, but you don't air this kind of thing in front of everyone. You're humiliating us." "Good," I said. "Maybe now you'll understand how humiliation feels when it's happening to someone else." Her lip quivered, but she said nothing. I picked up my phone, stopped the video, and looked around the table. "Consider this notice," I said. "You're not welcome in my home without my permission. Ever." Karen's eyes flashed. "You can't just shut us out." I smiled faintly. "Watch me." Then I turned, grabbed my coat from the back of the chair, and headed for the door. Behind me, voices began to rise, angry, confused, pleading, but I didn't look back. The night air outside was sharp and clean. My breath came out in steady clouds as I crossed the driveway and slid into my car. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, the quiet hum of the engine filling the void left by their shouting. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was just done. As I drove away, snow began to fall, slow, heavy flakes that blurred the streetlights into halos. For a second, I thought about turning back, about trying to explain myself. But then I remembered the sound of Karen laughing in that video and my mother's calm voice saying, "She'll forgive us. She always does." Not this time. When I pulled into my driveway, Muffin was waiting on the windowsill. Her tail flicked as I unlocked the door. The warmth of home hit me instantly, quiet, safe mine. I dropped my purse, knelt down, and let her climb into my lap. "Guess it's just us now," I whispered. She purred in response, pressing her head against my chin. I let out a long, slow breath and checked my phone again. A message from David waited at the top of the screen. "Delivered fraud report submitted. Cease and desist issued. Property protection in effect." Everything was in motion now. I set the phone down and leaned back against the couch. The faint sound of the wind outside blended with the hum of the heater. My body finally began to relax, though my mind stayed alert, sharp-coiled. They'd underestimated me for years. That mistake was about to cost them everything. I ran my fingers through Muffin's fur, watching the snow gather outside, and whispered to the quiet room, "Merry Christmas, Mom. You got the show you wanted." The following week unfolded like the quiet after an explosion. The house was still, but the air buzzed with something unspoken, the kind of tension that settles between breaths when you're waiting for the next impact. I spent the first 2 days pretending everything was normal. Work emails, video calls, morning runs. But beneath that routine, my nerves hummed. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be my mother or Karen or worse, an unknown number linked to their latest stunt. When I finally opened my messages, there were 17 missed calls, 5 from my mother, 8 from Karen, and 4 from Brad. The texts were a collage of guilt, rage, and desperation. "You've gone too far, Clara. We're family. You can't just do this. If you show that video to anyone, I'll never forgive you. Think about the kids." I didn't reply, but I didn't have to, because they found another way to reach me. On December 28th at 8:46 a.m., I received a notification from my front door security app. Motion detected. I opened the live feed, and there they were. Karen stood on my porch in a heavy coat hair, tangled from the wind. Brad was behind her, holding a garbage bag full of what looked like clothes. The kids stood beside them, bundled in bright jackets, their small faces red from the cold. My mother was there too, clutching a set of keys, my old spare keys. I muted the sound and just watched for a moment. There was something hauntingly familiar about it, a replay of their false warmth, their confidence that I'd always open the door. I turned the audio on just as my mother said, "The key's not working. She must have changed the locks." Karen started pounding on the door. "Clara, we're freezing out here. Let us in." Muffin, startled by the noise, darted under the couch. I stayed completely still. Brad shifted uneasily. "Maybe we should just go," he muttered, his voice low, but caught by the microphone. "No," Karen snapped. "She can't keep us out. She's got 3 bedrooms. She owes us." That word "owes" sent a chill through me, sharper than the winter air outside. I stood just inside the hallway, silent and watching them through the live feed. My mother began pounding on the door too. "Open this door, Clara." You're being ridiculous. You have a family, remember? Then Karen's voice turned theatrical, loud enough for the neighborhood to hear. You're abusing the kids, Clara. They're freezing because of you. I'm recording this. I pressed the intercom button, my voice coming through the outdoor speaker. This property is under video and audio surveillance, I said evenly. Leave now, or I'll call the police. You are trespassing. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard my mother whisper, she wouldn't dare. I smiled bitterly. Try me, I said, still calm. Karen flinched. Her confidence cracked just slightly. The kids began to cry softly. I felt it in my chest, that old pull, that instinct to fix things. But I stood still. 10 minutes later, they left. Brad carried the kids back to the car while my mother muttered under her breath. Karen lingered for a moment, glaring at the camera before storming off. As soon as they drove away, I called David. They showed up, he asked. Yes, I have the footage, with audio. Good, he said simply. Keep it. If they try again, we'll file a restraining order. That night, my mother posted on Facebook. My daughter locked her sister and her children out in the freezing cold today. We had nowhere else to go. I hope someday she learns what compassion means. Within an hour, the post had more than 100 reactions. I didn't comment. I didn't have to. Because 30 minutes later, my phone started buzzing again. Not from them this time, but from relatives. Screenshots, shocked messages, disbelief. Did this really happen? Your mom's post seems different from what I heard. We saw the video, Clara. You did the right thing. Aunt Linda, never one to stay quiet, wrote a public comment beneath my mother's post. Perhaps compassion begins with honesty. Fraud and deceit don't count as family values. The thread exploded. My mother's post was deleted within the hour. Still, I couldn't shake the heaviness. I sat in the dark that night, staring at the faint reflection of myself in the window. The glow from the streetlight outlined the snow-covered lawn undisturbed, except for one set of footprints leading to the porch and back again. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Muffin jumped into my lap and curled up, her purring, a soft reminder of something constant. I stroked her fur and whispered, "We did the right thing, didn't we?" She purred louder, as if to reassure me. 2 days later, there was another knock on the door. My phone pinged again, with the security feed, this time only my parents. No Karen. I hesitated, then unlocked the top bolt and opened the door, just a crack. The cold air rushed in, biting against my skin. My father's expression was hard to read, a mix of exhaustion and shame. My mother's was something else entirely rehearsed, calm, the kind that barely hides indignation. We need to talk, my father said. About what? He hesitated. Karen's family has nowhere to stay. That's not my problem, I said quietly. My mother's voice cracked. Clara, you have to help your sister. I have helped her, I said. For 3 years straight. You all made sure of that. Dad exhaled a weary sound. You can't turn your back on family. Funny, I said. That's exactly what you did when you opened a credit card in my name. The words hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. I reached into my pocket and handed my mother a business card. This is a contact from social services, I said. They can help Karen's family find affordable housing and employment support. That's all I can do. She looked at the card like it was an insult. You want your sister to go on welfare. I want her to learn to survive without stealing from me. My father's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he didn't argue. He just looked tired. Older. Now, I said quietly, unless you plan to apologize, I need you to leave. My mother's expression hardened. Clara. I stepped back inside and closed the door. Their muffled voices faded down the driveway until all that was left was the creak of the wind. For the first time in months, the house was completely silent. Not lonely, just peaceful. I leaned against the door, exhaled, and felt the tension drain from my body like water spilling out of a cracked glass. It was over, or at least the loud part was. Somewhere deep down, I knew the silence would echo for a long time, but it was mine. My silence. My boundary. Muffin rubbed against my leg, meowing softly. I scooped her up, whispering, You and me, Muffin. Just us. She purred again, her warmth grounding me. Outside, the snow fell thicker, covering the footprints on the driveway, until there was no sign anyone had ever been there. The months that followed were strangely quiet. I had grown so used to chaos that peace felt unnatural, like a house after a storm still standing, but unsure what to do with the silence. Work trips picked up again. I'd wake before dawn, pack my suitcase, and drive to the airport while the neighborhood still slept. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the tug of guilt when my phone buzzed. There were no emergency calls from Karen, no tearful, "Can you send something this month?" Messages, no subtle reminders from my mother that family should always help each other. The line had gone dead. And I kept it that way. When I returned from trips, Muffin was always there, waiting a small, steady heartbeat in a world that had gone strangely hollow. She'd stretch, blink, and meow as if saying, "Welcome home, human. You did it." One evening in March, I was sitting on my couch with a cup of tea when my phone lit up with a message from Aunt Linda. "Just wanted you to know Karen and Brad are doing better. They got into a housing program through social services. Brad's working maintenance at the hospital. Karen cleans part-time there too. The kids are in school. Thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time, letting it sink in. It wasn't triumph, I felt it was something quieter, a kind of bittersweet peace. I typed back, "Thank you for telling me. I'm glad they're okay." "They even got a bigger place than before," Aunt Linda added. "Looks like they're figuring things out." I smiled faintly. Good. That night, I went online and opened my banking app. For the last 8 months, I'd been quietly transferring $500 into a separate savings account every month, the same amount I used to send to Karen. I'd named the account Emergency Fund. It wasn't for me. It was for them. Just in case someday a real emergency came, something serious, something that had nothing to do with guilt. At the top of the screen, the total read 4,000. I closed the app and leaned back, thinking of how different that number felt. Now, not as a burden, but as proof that boundaries don't have to mean cruelty. By summer, I'd almost stopped checking their social media entirely. The posts had shifted: fewer complaints, more photos of the kids at playgrounds, Brad fixing something in their yard, Karen holding a coffee cup and smiling at the camera. Real smiles this time, not the brittle ones from before. One picture caught me off guard. Emma, now 8, was holding up a drawing, a colorful sketch of a cat sitting by a window. The caption read, "Emma's new obsession art." I stared at that photo for a long time. Then quietly I added children's art set to my list of online orders. When December came around again, I didn't plan to visit my parents. I didn't even respond when the family group chat lit up with plans. But one evening, a single message arrived from my mother. "Clara, Thanksgiving dinner. You're always welcome to come home." No guilt, no demand, just a single sentence. I typed a response, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. Finally, I wrote, "Thank you, maybe another time." And that was enough. That weekend, I wrapped 2 gifts carefully. One for Emma, one for Jake. An art set for her, a dinosaur science kit for him. I didn't include a card or a note. I just mailed them to Karen's new address and left the sender blank. They'd know. On Christmas Eve, I found myself sitting in my living room again, lights twinkling softly across the room. The same couch, the same tree, but everything felt different, lighter, cleaner. I thought about that night a year ago, the red juice on my blouse, the humiliation, the anger. I thought about how it all burned away, something inside me, leaving behind something sharper, truer. Sometimes you think loving your family means giving endlessly, but sometimes love looks like refusal, like silence, like saying no when every voice tells you to say yes. I picked up Muffin and held her close. She purred, her warmth seeping into my chest, grounding me back in the present. The snow outside glowed under the streetlights. I raised my glass of wine in a small toast to peace, to freedom, to finally learning that boundaries are just another form of love. Because I hadn't destroyed my family. I'd just stopped letting them destroy me. And maybe, just maybe, this quiet, this still honest quiet was what healing actually sounded like.